Fellow Canadians, citizens of Alberta, and peoples of the First Nations, a declaration of sovereignty and unity. Today, in response to the announcements from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and the United Conservative Party regarding the October 19, 2026, referendum, asking Albertans whether they wish to remain a province of Canada or commence the legal process for a binding separation vote, I stand before you as a defender of Canadian sovereignty. This is not a time for equivocation or appeasement of fringe separatism. It is a time for direct, unyielding truth. Canada does not need Alberta. Alberta needs Canada. Any notion otherwise is a dangerous illusion born of pride, economic grievance, and a willful ignorance of history, law, and reality. Let this speech shatter that ego and pride. Separation is not viable. It is unconstitutional without the consent of the Crown, the First Nations whose treaties underpin the land, and the broader Canadian Federation. It would invite economic ruin, legal chaos, and potential conflict. We reject it utterly. The historical and legal foundation, treaty land and the Crown. Alberta is built on treaty land. This is not rhetoric, it is verifiable fact rooted in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, issued by King George III. That proclamation established that Indigenous lands west of the established colonies were reserved for First Nations, declaring they should not be molested or disturbed. Only the Crown could purchase or cede such lands through formal treaty. This framework was affirmed in the Constitution Act, 1867, and applied to what became Alberta through the numbered treaties, specifically Treaties 6 (1876), 7 (1877), and 8 (1899) signed between First Nations and the Crown. These treaties are not historical relics. They are living agreements protected under Section 35 of the Constitution Act, 1982. They bind the Crown, not a hypothetical independent Alberta. First Nations leaders, including the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations and others, have rightly opposed separation, arguing it violates treaty rights, imposes new international borders on traditional territories, and breaches the duty to consult. A recent court ruling by Alberta Justice Shana Leonard already quashed aspects of the separatist process for failing to consult First Nations. To the judicial system of Alberta or any court tempted to overlook this, do not attempt to overthrow or sidestep First Nations rights and Crown treaties. Such an action would be a profound betrayal of the honour of the Crown, unconstitutional, and invite not only domestic legal challenges but international scrutiny. Treaties predate provincial boundaries. Alberta exists because of them, not in spite of them. Any separation without explicit First Nations approval is legally void and morally bankrupt. The Supreme Court of Canada has been clear: secession requires constitutional amendment, negotiations involving all parties, and respect for Aboriginal rights. Alberta needs Canada, economic, practical, and sovereign realities. Alberta benefits immensely from Confederation. While Albertans have been net contributors to federal revenues in strong years, funding transfers, health care, and national programs, the Federation provides stability, shared infrastructure, international trade leverage as part of a G7 nation, the Canada Pension Plan, national defense, and open borders for goods, people, and capital. Economists like Trevor Tom have modeled separation. It would shrink Alberta's economy by $20–30 billion annually through trade barriers, lost federal programs, higher borrowing costs, currency uncertainty, and capital flight. Alberta would face new borders, renegotiated trade deals, division in national debt and assets, and the loss of federal transfers. E.g., billions in Canada Health Transfer. An independent Alberta would be poorer, more exposed to oil price volatility, and diplomatically isolated. Canada, conversely, would adapt. Our economy is diversified. Alberta's resources are valuable, but they flow through Canadian pipelines, ports, and markets. The rest of Canada would retain sovereignty over its territory, military, and alliances. Prideful claims of going it alone ignore interdependence. Alberta's prosperity is amplified by being Canadian. The perils of separation and foreign intervention. If Alberta attempts unilateral separation, it triggers constitutional crisis. The Clarity Act and Supreme Court precedents require clear expression of will, followed by negotiations, not unilateral action. Without First Nations consent and broad Canadian agreement, it fails. Should the United States attempt to intervene or invade Canadian territory amid such chaos, perhaps exploiting division, they would face resolute resistance. We recall history. On August 24, 1814, during the War of 1812, British forces, operating from what is now Canada, burned the White House in retaliation for American incursions. We are no longer British colonies, but the spirit of sovereignty endures. Any invasion of Canada would be met with the full force of our unified nation. We would defend every inch of our territory, and history shows we do not yield lightly. Such intervention would not liberate Alberta, it would ignite a multi-party conflict, Canada defending its sovereignty, First Nations protecting treaty lands, and potentially fracturing alliances. It risks civil war-like conditions across borders, destabilizing North America. No rational actor desires this. Alberta separatists must confront this. Your movement endangers not just prosperity but peace and security. A call to unity and sovereignty. To Albertans flirting with separation, your grievances, over federal policies, resource development, equalization, are heard. But they are best addressed within Canada, through democratic reform, not fracture. Polls show most Albertans oppose full separation. The October referendum tests resolve, but it cannot override the Constitution or treaties. Canada is sovereign, indivisible without consent. We are stronger together, from Atlantic to Pacific to Arctic, bound by shared values, history, and law. First Nations, provinces, and territories form one nation under the Crown's enduring framework. Separatists, abandon this folly. It shatters against facts, historical, legal, economic. Alberta needs Canada far more than Canada needs any single province. We choose unity, sovereignty, and mutual respect. For the First Nations whose land this is, your treaties stand. Your rights are protected. We honor the Crown's word. To all Canadians, stand firm. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. We have faced greater challenges and prevailed. God keep our land glorious and free. Canada remains whole. This is the authoritative truth. It cannot be reasonably disputed on the verifiable record.